Like other communities in the early 1800s, children in L'Ardoise were educated by their parents. In later years, education took place in small schoolhouses located in various parts of the community. Though these schools were free and easy to access, most students were not encouraged to seek a higher education. Many dropped out to help support their families. In 1948, there was a consolidation of schools, and students from all over the parish were taught in a central school built in West L'Ardoise. Les Filles de Jésus, who had come to L'Ardoise in 1943, played a significant role in the new school community.
I got to know you and to love you through the Home and School Associations and the CWL. You never know why I love them so much. I thought the people were very generous. We had a very hearty welcome, and they had great respect for the sisters. And I admired their endeavor to fight for their rights. You'll never know the work they went through to have the school here consolidated. The people had to go from house to house to try and persuade the parents to close their school and send their children to West L'Ardoise Consolidated School. Now that was only the beginning, because after a few years, they had again another fight. It was a challenge to keep their children, to keep the high school pupils from going to St. Peter's, and they won. Now Inspector Sullivan from Sydney came here, and after a 1-hour speech trying to persuade the parents to send their children to St. Peter's, I think they had to vote. And of course, it was 100% in favor of leaving them here. So the following day, Inspector Sullivan came to me and he said, Sister Laurentia, I think you'll have to teach grade 12. Now that was no news to me, because I knew I had told the trustees that I would teach grade 12. And in fact, when I came in 43, I taught grade 11 to 2 pupils, Fabien Martel and Edwin Sanson. And they both got their grade 11. So that was a feather on my hat.
After the destruction by fire of the parish center in 1946 and the community school in 1962, students attended a new school which was opened in 1964. This structure is still used today. The site of the Dr. William B. Kingston Memorial Clinic was once a family residence and in later years a convent. For many years since its founding in 1943, the convent was occupied by the Sisters of Les Filles de Jésus. After 40 years, the sisters departed from the community and the convent was transformed into a medical clinic. In 1996, a new funeral home was erected on the grounds next to the church. Also, located on the church property is an older cemetery which has graves dating prior to 1837, as well as a monument dedicated to the native priests of L'Ardoise. In 1888, the parishioners of Les Saints Anges Gardiens opened the doors of a new church. In the early 1900s, electricity was installed, and in 1969, it was renovated and modernized. Sadly, this church burned down in 1972. In 1976, a new building was completed and stands as the present house of worship.
We lived 8 miles from church, and when I first remember going to church was to make the first communion, and we had to go, like, Mass was 7 o'clock in the morning, and we had to leave here at probably 5:30, walk the 8 miles without breakfast to communion, confession and communion. In fact, there were some times we'd leave here at that hour of the morning, go to confession. When we get up there, we'd be standing in line at the confession. You'd be cut off from somebody right alongside of the church. It was a long haul those days to go to church. There was more people in church them days than there is now, though.
"1998 has been a year of celebration for the parish, beginning on January 2nd with an opening Mass. During the celebration, a banner was presented in recognition of the year's theme, Building a Family of Faith.
Paroisse Saint-Anne-Gabriel.
Yes, I was honored to being asked to assist Fawn in taking the banner up for the celebration.
I felt very good. A little, well, not a little nervous, but I was more nervous for myself if I could walk to the altar with it. But I did all right.
The theme, Building a Family of Faith, played an important role throughout the year, culminating with a large celebration in September. All activities were planned and carried out by a committee of parishioners under chairperson Sally Ann Mumberket.
In May of 1997, we began the preparations for the 175th anniversary. It was a committee made up of about 10 or 12 people who worked, but it was a committee that spread out into the whole parish and included any number of volunteers. And we don't have any problem getting volunteers. We had people who worked on the meals, we had people who worked on the church part of it, we had people who worked on the video, we had any number of people who worked on the display of pictures of. We had any number of people who were willing to do that. We had any number of people who baked and cooked for the meal or reception part of the area. And this is one of the things that I want to make clear today, that this is, you know, it's not just a couple of people who organized this, but it's been a whole parish activity. And so, and I want to add at this point that Father McIntyre has been, you know, always supportive and always ready to agree with whatever we have decided to do, and we thank him for that. And he has become a very important part of this whole celebration.
Celebration of the Mass. On behalf of the parish, I wish to welcome you all here, and it's just so wonderful to see the large crowd on this to help us make this a very special celebration of our 175th anniversary. I'd like to welcome Bishop Campbell, priests, sisters, former parishioners, friends from neighboring parishes. After I'd like to introduce all the priests in the sanctuary, and then Sally Ann Mumberket, the chairman of our anniversary committee, will make a few remarks. So I'm just going to turn around here and start at this corner. Father Errol McDonald, Father Stanley McDonald, Father John McLeod, and on the other side of the bishop, Father Robert Donnelly, and hopefully I'll get the focus here, Father Sandy McNeil, and Father Maurice, and Father Frank Gall, Father Doug McKinnon, and Father Hugh McDougall, and behind Father Hugh McDougall on the outside, Father Yvonne, and Father J.J. McDonald, and Father Russ Sampson, Father Bruno Ruel, and Father Francis Cameron. And before I finish, communion will be available under both species. We invite you to come up the center aisle and down the sides by rows, and there will be 2 ministers with chalices on each side.
In November of the year 1822, a young Irish priest named Henry McKegley arrived at Ayrshire. At the beginning of January 1823, he made his way to Ordways to take charge of his new mission. His job description, so to speak, was to minister to the people of the northern and southern shores of St. Peter's Bay, on the south from Grand Big to Discuss, and on the north from Grand End to Lardwas. Because he could speak English, he was to take care of the Mi'kmaqs in the Lake Mission, together with the Scots and Irish settled between St. Peter's and Red Islands. It had already been agreed that Lordways would be the place of residence of this new priest, for 2 reasons. One, because it was equally easy to go to the lake and to St. Peter's Bay. And one other consideration was that in choosing Lordways was that there would not be a great deal of expense, because Lordways was out of the way to strangers, and any resident priest would be able to live there without going into debt. Obviously, this reason was flawed. I'm going to stop now and ask people if they wish to sit, they may sit. You don't have to stand for me.